Hi everyone, my name is Booney. I'm a life coach for gifted and creative people. I'm a former preschool teacher, outreach counselor intern for elementary school, and a former college counselor for creative students. And with all this background, I would like to focus on executive functioning skills. But before I start, I would love to ask everyone to subscribe if you haven't already. It'll help give you updates on video content related to personal development, archetypes, neurodivergence, and executive functioning skills. And don't forget to give this video a like. I'd really appreciate that. So on with the video. Again, with my background as being a fellow scattered mind, a creative person, executive functioning skills for me has been my own individual struggle. And what does it mean to have executive functioning skills? Well, according to different people, it comes to the same conclusion. The summary of executive functioning skill is it's a set of skills required to accomplish a task, basically. And for some of us who have ADHD, are autistic, creative mind, very divergent thinking, very scattered, having accomplishments with tasks is not the easiest thing for us. And I know it's very frustrating for those on the outside, those who live with different cognitive profiles as well. I'm sure we do suffer. We feel frustrated. We feel shamed sometimes. We feel less than. We just are very, we're struggling. We're struggling and we're frustrated with ourselves. And there's a lot of things that we start. A lot of us are really good at starting projects, having ideas, making aha moments and thinking about, I have an idea, I want to do this now. And yet we don't finish what we start, or we have a difficult time following through on the menial things that we don't really want to do, like daily chores, daily living. We want to work on big things that don't have anything to do with surviving, eating food, doing laundry, forgetting to put things away and stuff like that. So I'm thinking about two resources to link in the description. The first one is a book called Smart But Scattered. Let's see if people can read. There. Smart But Scattered. There's one for children, and this one's The Guide to Success for Adults. It's by Peg Dawson and Richard Guare. They're both educators, and as someone who leans towards cognition and understanding how you think, I think for me the strongest way to learn and grow, to reach personal development, is to understand how you learn. And that is paired with executive functioning skills. It's paired with your cognitive functions for typology systems like Myers-Briggs. I think that's very important, as many systems shape how we process information, what information is the most important or the strongest format for us to learn the most effectively. And unfortunately, when your cognitive profile is different, the education system fails you. The education system teaches to a limited group of learners, and if you fall outside that parameter of ideal learner, the ones that don't regurgitate information and memorize using a worksheet, we're kind of screwed. We're stuck, and we feel frustrated. We feel kind of stupid sometimes. We feel dumb. We feel like people are looking at us like they think we are dumb too. And it's this internalization that happens over the years where we don't reach our potential, whether we're a creative person, whether we have some type of gift or something to offer, relationships, ourselves, humanity. We lose that spark. We lose that hope that there's something within us that is unique and special. Because I do think everyone has something to offer, whether it's on an individual scale or larger social scales. It depends. But a lot of us who are divergent thinkers, who think differently, we are misunderstood. And so I'll break it down with different ways people do learn. When I think about executive functioning skills, I think about the creative learner who sometimes needs to have the visual, a creative assignment to apply a new term. Like, here, can you draw what this looks like? Can you pair this with a visual to help me understand the term in terms of like how its impact on society, how to actually use the numbers? Because I see a lot of creatives struggle in math. That was the strongest thing that I saw as a college counselor. A lot of creative people don't have that number sense to understand how to do well in mathematics, like algebra, during measurements. It's just not there because the way they're being taught is just like here's the equation. I'm just gonna show you how I do it. But there's no answer to why or how. And I think that's what creative people are looking for. And yet people who teach through regurgitation and just like memorizing equations and how to answer something, they're not looking for a why. A lot of people who are divergent thinkers are looking for the why and the reason, because if you understand why something is done, that solidifies everything to know when to use a certain equation, to understand what the measurements actually mean, because you can apply it to real life. And again, a lot of people don't ask why we learn what we learn. We don't have permission to ask questions. We just are, here's the data, memorize it for your test, fill in the definition, and then you get an A, or you get whatever grade you get, right? And so for those who question knowledge, those who question application, those who have strong values and want to make sure that this information is important in terms of greater social causes or challenging critical thinking skills, these are the type of learners that sometimes get identified as a problematic learner. They get identified as you cause trouble, you're resistant, you're challenging authority, or you're just not teachable. A lot of these perceptions are implicit. Sometimes they're rumored in the classroom or rumored throughout different teachers, and then it kind of becomes the identity of a learner, and that's a terrible thing to feel and internalize. And some of these things get taught and spread to parents as well. Like, so it's like this large systemic issue or this organism that kind of becomes its own monster, because you're not teachable only because of a certain way, of teaching. Then it starts spreading into how people treat you, into how people see you, and it can be a problem in the home too. So I first want to honor the frustration that parents and guardians and caregivers, tutors can have with someone who has a different executive function profile. It's just different, and yet it's very complicated if you don't think the same way. And part of that is, two things that I want to mention after rambling so long is there's two things that we could try. So there's this executive functioning conference that's going on right now by Seth Perler. He's an executive functioning coach. He works with executive function skills. He has a background in education, academics, and he found a wonderful group of people to interview to talk more about executive functioning skills, specifically to break it down in more concrete terms and how to encourage learning, being your best self despite learning differently. And that's a thing that we get sometimes, like if you're different, you start internalizing that you're bad and you're wrong. I hope that, my videos and the resources that I share help you soon to kind of discard these perceptions of less than, this shame that you probably carry with you because it's heavy, it's a burden. You feel like you're unteachable, unlovable. We kind of like translate these things into different ways where if people can't teach you, you feel like you're bad. If people can't understand you, you feel like you're wrong, you're unworthy of love, and so like it's not just learning, it's your identity and your self-esteem and your confidence to grow and become your own person that I think is so powerful. So like learning how you think, learning your cognition, your cognitive profile through archetypal systems, through Myers-Briggs, through cognitive functions and executive function skills can all be empowering. And so I'm hoping that this can plant some seeds to learn something different about how you see yourself, because you're not wrong, you're beautiful, you're just misunderstood and you've been taught incorrectly. And that's okay, like educators, they took this oath to do no harm and to help society through teaching and education. I'm sure that they've gotten this gentle nudge to learn more about what executive functioning skills are so they can reach more students. And that's an empowering thing to do as well as an educator, that you decided to learn more, you decided to understand that there are more ways to teach a student. Differentiation of learning, right? You can reach more students and you can be adaptable. And that just helps you become more compassionate, a more productive, effective teacher too. So on top of that, with the conference that's going on, you can sign up for it right now. You get access for an entire year. I think it's a very reasonable cost too, like $90-something for so many conversations and skills and resources. So two things that I got from it was the thinking out loud, which I do, as you can see right now, I think out loud. I'm not sure where I'm going to go sometimes, and yet to have the freedom and respect, the space to speak out loud, it gives me opportunity to shape my thought. I can start discarding what doesn't belong here. I can learn to pace myself and go slower. I can be more selective with my terms, what words I use. And yet in the beginning, it can seem very scattered. If you have someone with ADHD who's super excited in your life, they don't know how to regulate their voice yet, their tone, they're super loud and excited. And you're like, oh my God, how did this little person get so loud when they're talking, when they're excited, they can't regulate their tone. It's just like a lot of energy. And so with energy and learning how to regulate your thoughts, emotions, energy, it's all energy. Allow someone who has a different cognitive profile to think out loud. I know it's frustrating to have someone think out loud. It is, because it's sometimes doesn't make sense what they're saying. It doesn't make sense where they're going. It sometimes is incorrect information too. And so allow them to just practice speaking. Again, it's not the same as how you think or learn information, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. As if you know someone who like moves around with their body, if they're an experiential learner, if they learn through experimentation, testing hypothesis, maybe drawing while they're taking notes, please allow them to do that. People who fidget while they're taking lecture, listening to lecture, I do it. When people are lecturing and I was in school, I would doodle. That would help me pair to stimuli to learn more efficiently, because I can pair the doodle with a keyword that I remember, like, oh, this keyword means this to me, like a color or a theme or some like expression. I'm going to remember it more because I doodled in the way I learn and express myself the most personal way that I do it. And then some people who are very sensory, we fidget, let them shake their leg, let them fidget with a pencil, like let them just play with something in their hand while they're listening. Because again, the more senses that we incorporate into educating someone, I think the more effective we can have them internalize, process, really learn the information. It's not just like reading off of the presentation and hoping that they get it, because that's only one way to teach, really it is. And so like going back to Myers-Briggs and pairing it with archetypes, there ESTPs, SE dominants, and ESFPs and ENFPs, ENTPs, we're all very strong perceivers. We lead with extroverted sensing and extroverted intuition. Unfortunately, a lot of us were seen as bad students. A lot of us were seen as very reactive. We moved too much. We didn't understand the information. We questioned authority. We asked a lot of questions because we didn't understand. But it was perceived that instead of us not understanding, they were seeing us as someone who challenged authority, who didn't want to sit and learn. Some students don't do well by sitting and just absorbing information. It's like sitting in a prison. How can we expect children, students, adolescents, across the lifespan? It's not normal to sit somewhere for 6 hours a day and expect you to be like your best self. It's just not possible. As you've been in the pandemic, you know that you cannot sit for that long. It's torture. And so for us who have different layers of perception, cognitive abilities, sensory experiences, and needs, I hope that this can bring about change for the better, to know that there's different ways to learn, and to incorporate more listening to your body as well, because a lot of people would do better if we did incorporate different ways of showing information. It's not just some boring presentation that is not going to reach most people. Their eyes glaze over, they get bored, and some people might listen to some keywords, but you might have to listen again and again. And so that transitions from, letting someone think out loud, letting someone move their body while they're learning. Let them lecture you. So this is not my idea, but I've heard it before multiple times, where if you want someone to learn something, ask them to teach you. Ask them to teach you. That makes sure that they understand the main points. And if they're incorrect, again, this is from one of the conversations from the TIFOS conference. I really encourage you to look into buying it and listening to all the conversations, because they're very valuable. So ask someone to teach you. If you have a child with ADHD in your life, you have to teach them the key words. like vocabulary, what they just read. You ask them, in a kind way. So tell me what you just read. What's the most important thing that you got from it? And if they're off, you can start asking them questions or like give them facial expression like, kind of off, then you give them some time to figure it out. Like, okay, that wasn't correct. Let me say it again. And the more times you kind of learn how to like do this dance of cognition with them and having them express themselves, that again empowers their voice, because usually when you think differently, you learn over time that your voice doesn't matter. That's the thing that I fear for a lot of our divergently minded people, that are scattered minds, that because you think differently, because you process the world and sensation differently, the world can make you small and feel ashamed and unworthy of love and attention, that you minimize yourself, you make yourself small, that you don't speak up. And that has implication towards relationships. It can have implication towards what we think is normal. So if we know that, and we have been experiencing that it's normal for us to be mistreated and not valued with our voice, how will we do that in romantic relationship? What kind of person will we seek out in friendships? People that don't value our voice to speak up. And so I want to bypass that as much as possible by empowering those who do think out loud, who think differently, to continue to speak, and having the love and the care and support to shape it and nurture it over time. And so you can be more empowered, more concrete, and just decisive with what you say. So it doesn't have to be frustrating for everybody involved. So like that's my personal note and encouragement for those who do think differently, to allow them to just speak out loud. If not, what I do? I write a lot. That's still a way to think out loud. Just journal, make lists, post-it notes, paragraphs upon paragraphs on Facebook responses, Quora, any way to get it out there, because it's energy. Energy outside is good because it helps regulate your emotional system. So the next thing is, on top of just helping someone think out loud with all these different strategies, is to allow for a lot of practice. So one of the books that I'm listening to is called Ungifted. It's by Scott Barry Kaufman, and he is a psychologist who used to be in special education. And yet he knew he wanted to do more, and he craved learning, he craved education, and he is gifted. He was perceived a certain way. He was identified with a special need, and yet there's this asynchronous cognitive profile that so many people have. Like if you're seen as your deficits, you won't be seen as your strengths, and you won't see your potential. And that's, again, something that happens to a lot of creative minds, a lot of creative people, even though it looks like they don't know how to verbalize themselves, or on paper it doesn't look like they're quote unquote intelligent. You ask them to draw something, you ask them to visually, musically express a concept that they've learned through the body, you'll surprise yourself with how much they actually understood. If you give them the time to explain in their language what they understood and learned, you can be happily surprised again by what someone actually knows. So you can dismiss or like change what your stereotypes of what you think a smart person looks like. So that's kind of cool too. So on top of like the rote memorization that we tend to do or force our students to do, I like to offer a caveat or like a notice for when it comes to having those with different executive function profiles in your life. And I know it's frustrating. You fear for their future. You're frustrated with how to reach them. You may have arguments and like a lot of tension, a lot of crying and screaming, a lot of heavy, intense emotions when it comes to learning, like finishing homework. They forget to turn things in. They just give up. They feel like they can't get it. And so I understand that, and I offer my compassion to the frustration that does come with learning, because it is a lifelong struggle. It's going to be a lifelong process of understanding what everyone's unique cognitive profile is, and that will come with time. So please give yourself that self-love to know that you've done enough to show that you care. Like you're trying so hard to help the learners in your life that you do care. I see that you do. I hope you honor that. Another skill or thing that I'd like you to think about is, again, the concept of practice. So listening to Scott Barry Kaufman's book on Gifted, it's like he's challenging what it means to be an intelligent person. And so he talks about like the 10,000 hour rule, and talks about how the perfectionists, or not the professionals, and the those who really did make it in their craft, how long they practice. And he mentioned that, you know, amateurs or whoever who kind of like doing something in a certain field, like musicians, they practice about 10 hours a week. And he mentioned that the ones who just exceptionally grew in their craft practice about 4 hours a day. And that's phenomenal. That's like, so just throwing out that, knowing that people's cognitive abilities are so different, I think it's important to know that just because you learn in a certain way, let's say that a typical learner takes about 10 to 15 repetitions to learn something, perhaps your learner who has an executive function difference, it might take them 100 times. You know, I'm not trying to make it scary, but I'm just being realistic that some of us take extra long to absorb information. And then I pair that with when you have someone who you tell them to do something and they just, I forgot. I've been there. I've been that kid where you asked me to do something and you asked me a day later, like, did you do it? I didn't do it. I forgot. Or if you have a memory of something and I don't remember, I don't remember, you know? And so like my brain is just, it's just wired differently. And so it's not a deficit, it's just a difference. I hope that the learners and the adults who survived school who do think differently, I hope you understand that your difference is not bad, it's just misunderstood. And hopefully these resources and this video can help you offer you some validation and mirroring that, you know, there's a lot of people out there who do learn differently, and that's okay. We just have to learn to advocate for ourselves and identify how we do learn the best, because once we can empower ourselves to grow even more. So knowing that the repetition is very essential, I offer you this space to cultivate patience and just acceptance that, hey, my learner might take a couple hundred repetitions to learn something, and that's just how they learn. I can't force it. I will be frustrated and be impatient sometimes, and yet slowly accept that their brain is just wired this way. And if I can give them space to practice without shame, without ultimatums, without making them feel bad, they can grow to their best potential as well. So that's my video on executive functions and 2 strategies. Again, it's about repetitions and allowing the external thinker to think out loud. So I hope these strategies help, and the resources are very useful as well. I look forward to making more videos about executive functioning skills in the future. And again, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. I'd really appreciate it. And also give my video a like. And if you'd love to support me, I would really appreciate it if you could share this video in any parenting groups, any executive functioning groups, any educational groups that you think might benefit from this conversation as well. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.